DAS 20, disclosure of government grants and disclosure of government assistance. The objective of the standards to account for and disclose the government grants, also the disclosure of other forms of government assistance. What said I receive some government fund for a purpose, and even the purpose is being satisfied, I can consider as an expense or an income or reduce from the value of the asset or reduce an value of a liability. This is what a grant usually works. So now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? How to account it as per the Ind AS? Why Ind AS? The gap is there for what? All Indian companies. When you go for consolidation, all the companies in the world is coming into it. You want to take into consideration of grants given by various countries in India. So that you want to think big. Government grants assistance by the government in the form of transfer of resources to an entity in return of the past and future complaints. So resources been transferred for what? For the past. What I have done in the past for that. Or what you're going to do in future for that. With the condition, certain condition relation to operation activities of the entity. Only thing is to do something. Operation, some need to be done. For doing some operation. Operation of what? Do my current things. Produce, sales, recruit employees, such a thing. Why exactly the form of government assistance which cannot be reasonable, having a value placed upon the transaction of the government, which cannot be distinguished from the normal trading activities of the entity? They exclude the form of government assistance. Some assistance are excluded and which cannot be have value placed upon transaction. Cannot the government which cannot be distinguished from the normal trading transaction of the entity. What? For example, for viewing using UPI transactions, UPI transaction having selling office using UPI, na, we will give you waive of fees. It is government project. So do I need to consider as a grant? Not required. It's a normal transaction. And government is saying, if you got loan from this bank, we will waive off all the transaction charges. Not interest. Transaction charges is completely waived off for our next 5 years. This is it's not it's not be able to distinguish from the normal trading transactions. It is just a transaction, such a way of thing. So what grant to be considered as a transaction, what grant should not be considered as transaction comes from it. The government grants include the monetary grants for fair value, which shall not be recognized until there is a reasonable assurance. So it okay. Government can shall also include non-monetary grant. What is non-monetary grant? Which is not in form of money and which shall be recognized. If not, but it shall not be recognized when there is not a reasonable assurance. Hey, when there is no assurance, we can't recognize what entity will comply with the conditions attached to them, or the grant will be received. They don't know the certainty of grant received, or they don't know when they will be for complying with the conditions. The government can shall recognize in profit and loss on a systematic basis over the periods in which entity recognizes expenses, related costs in which grants are intended to compensate. So recognize the profit and loss in systematic basis. So every year, example, I had an asset. That asset I had it. Now the asset which is bought for 1 crore, government gave 40 lakhs as a grant. But now what I do, I will consider the asset as 1 crore and 40 grand as an reserve. And whenever I charge depreciation, I will charge depreciation on this grant. And this grant will be considered as income and depreciation as an expense and it will be net off. Yeah. By this way, systematically I will reduce. Or I will reduce the cost directly from the value of the asset. Such a way the different kind of considering grant. The two approaches the accounting for grant. What the capital approach under which grant is recognized outside the profit and loss, or income approach when the gain is recognized on the profit and loss over the one or time. Outside the profit, na asset is there. 1 crore, I subtracted 40 lakhs. Now asset is 60 lakhs. It is outside the P&L. But I recognize 1 crore and charging depreciation, it is going to P&L at law as expenses, and I'm considering the grant as a income. Every year, every part of the grant is considered as income. This is approach is income approach. Government grant that becomes receivable as a compensation for the expenses or loss already incurred for the purpose of giving immediate financial support to the entity, with no further related cost shall be recognized in profit and loss for the period in which becomes receivable. Okay, so the government can become receivable when a compensation for the expenses are not already incurred. The purpose of giving immediate financial support to the entity with no further future related cost shall be recognized in profit and loss for the period in which become receivable. So it should be receivable. Na? When it receivable, certainty is there, then you can charge to P&L. Non-monetary government grants. What is non-monetary government grant? The government grant may take the form of transfer of non-monetary assets, such as land, other resources for the use of entity. In the circumstances, it is usually the assets, the fair value of non-monetary asset to the account of both grant and asset to the fair value. An alternative course sometimes followed in the record of both asset and grant to be nominal value. Sometimes government may give you land, and sometimes they give raw material, sometimes they give you any resources, they give you electricity, a subsidized rate, some many things possible. The material amount, the non-monetary amount. Electricity is an unit, as electricity is an asset, okay? They can provide if they possible. So when they provide, how to value it? Valuation should be in the nominal value. Why nominal value? You can't do market value. Should be fair value. But based on the fair value, non-monetary should be accounted for the grant. Mm. Government grant related to asset. What is the government grant related to assets or government grant? Whose primary condition that the entity qualify them should be purchased, contract, or otherwise require long-term assets. So grant are usually given for the purchase. I want to purchase, I will give subsidy. I'm going to construct something, so I will give subsidy. Or I'm going to have a long-term asset for that I need help. Such a way the grant works. The subsidy condition may also attach a restriction, a type or location of the asset, or the period during which they have been acquired or held. Because they may also give subsidy. Grant and subsidies are slightly different. The intention is same, but they have a slight difference. In the case of subsidy, they attach a condition for what this should be used in this location. This type of asset only can buy. This location asset should be there. So this long you can't sell this asset, and this person can only acquire it, and he need to hold this asset for this many long time. Such a way they will see. So the government grant related to assets, including non-monetary asset grants or the fair value, shall be presented at the balance sheet, either by setting up the grant as a deferred income or by deducting the grant and arriving at the carrying amount of asset. But as I have said earlier, rather you can deduct the total grant from the asset value. Asset got 1 crore, 40 lakhs grant, 60 lakhs asset value became. Or if not, you can consider as deferred income. How consider as asset 1 crore and 40 lakhs as grant. Every year, a portion of the grant based upon the useful life of the asset, you consider a deferred income, charge it in the P&L as a income. At the same time, you charge depreciation. So both of them knocks off. Why they are asking to do it? And the grant is taxable. That you will see in different chapter. Right now, we are focusing on only accounting of grant. The two method of presentation of statement of grant and the appropriate portion of grant related to the assets are recognized as acceptable alternative. One method recognizes grant as a deferred income that is recognized in profit and loss on a systematic basis over the useful life of the subsidiary good. The other method deduct the grant in calculation the carrying amount of asset. The grant is recognized as profit and loss over the life of the depreciable asset and the reduced depreciation expenses. The government grants related to income or the grant related to income shall be present as a part of profit and loss account. Yes, it can be channeled profit and loss either separately or under the general headings other income. Usually it comes in other income. Alternatively, it can be deducted in the report for related expenses. Sometimes it calls for the other expense. Repayment of government grants. What? The government may provide loans. You need to repay. But the subsidy is on the form. If you violate the condition, they ask you to repay. A government has given grant, you have violated, you need to repay it. Such kind of problem may happen. Government grants became repayable shall be accounted for a change in accounting estimate as per Ind AS 8 accounting policy, change in accounting estimates and other. The repayment of grant related to income shall be applied to first against any unamortized deferred credit and recognized in respect of the grant. So first one, how you account, there will be unamortized credit in the books of account. That will go for repayment. That they are saying, the entry they are saying. You can understand the entry. Yeah, I will teach you the entry. First, if money came or bank account to grant, government grant. This government grant will be in liability side. And this government grant, what you will government grant to amortize the income such a way you charge to every year. So right now you need to pay back. So government grant to bank, you're paying bank to bank. This was this entry is being set here. To the extent the repayment exceeds any such default credit and there is no default credit exceeds, the repayment shall be recognized immediately to profit and loss account. So already I have utilized the credit for some years. That is considered as income. Now from that income it will go to expenses. Yeah. How was the entry government grant to bank here 40 lakhs, here only 30 lakhs na, to P until 10 lakhs. It's expense for me. The repayment of grant related to asset shall be recognized by the increase in Ind AS 20 accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance carrying out with assets and reducing the deferred income balance by the amount payable. The cumulative additional depreciation that could have been recognized in profit and loss would date in absence of the grant shall be recognized immediately in the profit and loss account. So the cumulative shall be recognized there. What is government assistance? Okay, these are the part of the entry I have discussed. Now we're going for the next point, government assistance. Government assistance is action by a government designed to provide an economic benefit, specific to entity or range of entity qualified under certain criteria. So some entities are qualified. For them, assistance is required. For that, money is given. And the government assistance for the purpose of the standard does not include benefits provided only indirectly through affecting general trading conditions, the provision of infrastructure in the development areas, or the imposition of trading constraints or competitors. The following matters shall be disclosed: what the accounting policy adopted by the government grants, including method of preparation, presentation, or automation. So in the financial statement, we need to give notes to accounts. In the notes to account, government grant should be mentioned, how much money we can raise, and how you accounting it should be mentioned. Now, what our the accounting, sir? Income approaches account are indirectly outside the P&L. I have followed it. You should mention that. The nature and extent of government can recognize a financial statement and indication of other form of government assistance from which the entity has directly made. So, list of government grant, how you have done recognize the government grant, you should mention unfulfilled conditions and other contingencies attached to the government assistance that has been recognized. You should say these are the contingencies attached to the government grant, and these are being done. This is going to be fulfilled the next year. That is also to be said in the government grant. Apex, India is 20 address the issue of whether government assistance and the government grant of the scope of India is 20 and therefore shall be accounted for the accordance with the standard. The appendix prescribe the government assistance to entities meet the definition of government grants in the AS 20. Even there is no condition specifically relating to operating activities in the entity, other than the requirement to operate in certain regions and industry sectors, the appendix provides that such grants shall not be credited directly into shareholders' interest. So these grants are to run the business, not to be considered as a dividend and issue to shareholders. That has been restricted and clearly said in the Indian. So this is the point of Ind AS 20 grants. Thank you. Next you will see Ind AS 21 soon.